Thank you for joining us. It is November 11, Remembrance Day, and we stop and pause and reflect on all of those who have served, including, of course, those who never made it home. At 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, the fighting stopped on the Western Front. The guns finally fell silent. So we stop today at 11 o'clock in silence and remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice. There are so many who did. 60,000 Australians lost their lives in World War I. Another 40,000 in World War II. 340 in Korea, 520 in Vietnam, 47 in Afghanistan and Iraq. In all wars and conflicts, more than 100,000 Australians have given their lives for this country, and we also need to remember all of those who have taken their own lives as a result of the horrors of war. We will remember them. And we do so this morning with the assistance of Dr. Brendan Nelson, the former head of the Australian War Memorial. Dr. Brendan Nelson, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ben.
Thank you for joining us. It is a very important day, isn't it, for so many Australians?
It is one of the most important days in our year, and as you just said, when the guns fell silent 103 years ago on this day in the First World War, we as a young nation emerged inconsolably mourning those 60,000 dead. And by the way, Ben, another 60,000 died within a decade of returning. We were victorious, but that day was Armistice Day. And this is the day we reflect upon, we remember those 2 million Australian men and women who wear and have worn the uniform of the Royal Australian Navy, the Australian Army, the Royal Australian Air Force, our 102,800 dead in war and peacekeeping operations, and as you remind us, those for whom the lived traumas were too much. It's not too much. We're all busy, Ben. We've got all sorts of pressures in our lives, but I just say to the 2GB listeners now, just take your smartphone, your alarm clock. Just set the alarm for 10:59 to remind you at 11 a.m. Just stop for one single minute to reflect on how fortunate we are as Australians with our political, economic and religious freedoms underwritten by the men and women whom we remember today and the families who love and support them.
Well said. And at 11 o'clock this morning on 2GB, there will be a minute's silence during Ray's show. Look, there are so many individual stories, and that's something that will come out on the radio and in conversations throughout the day. And I've heard you speak publicly before where you tell some of these individual stories. I'm wondering whether you can share the one about the surgeon on the Burma-Thai Railway.
Well, we're all familiar with Weary Dunlop, who was a charismatic, tall rugby player, surgeon, did extraordinary things on the Burma-Thai Railway. But then there were others, and there was a man called Major Kevin Fagan. And Russell Braddon wrote a book called The Naked Island, which was about Changi, Singapore. And he said, above all, there was the extraordinary courage and gentleness and incredible endurance of Kevin Fagan. Not only did he treat any man needing treatment to the best of his ability, he also carried the men who fell. He carried the kit of men in danger of falling. He marched up and down the whole length of the column through its entire progress. If we marched 100 miles through the jungle, Kevin Fagan marched 200, and when at the end of our night's trip we collapsed and slept, he was there to clean blisters, set broken bones, render first aid, and bury the dead. And all of it he did with the courtesy of a society specialist being richly paid and the ready humour of a man not tired at all. He was described as the most inspiring man I had ever met, said Braddon, and some 20,000 British and Australian troops share my view. But what is important, Fagan survived all that, Ben, but in 1946 he wrote about his experiences for the Medical Journal of Australia, and he said this: "It gave me a great understanding of men and great appreciation of ordinary things in life. Bread and butter, a bit of jam on your toast in the morning, a glass of beer when you're thirsty, and the value of human relations. You know, when it comes to an end, the only thing that really matters are the people whom you love and the people who love you."
Oh, wow.
And one of the things I realised through my 7 years leading the War Memorial, Ben, is in the end it's not about war. It's like today, it's not actually about war. It's in a context of war, but it's where we honour men and women who've devoted their lives largely not to themselves, but to us, and their last moments to one another. It's about love and friendship, love for friends and between friends, love of family, love of our country, and where we honour the truths by which we live. And that is a magnificent illustration of it, that in the end, it's about the people who love you and the people whom you love.
And on the people, I understand that you were listening as we just interviewed a gentleman we identified as Soldier 2 from November Platoon. And the ABC ran a story late last year without any evidence to back it up, suggesting that this platoon had shot a Afghan in cold blood because they didn't have enough seats on a helicopter. I'm appealing to the ABC to give these young men a fair hearing. I understand that you were listening in and you've got a view on this as well.
Well, I stand very strongly by the men of the SAS and of the commandos. I'm not suggesting that wrong or bad things haven't been done at any time, whether by them or going back to the First World War, Ben. But I do very strongly believe that we have to be very careful, and we live in a country of a free press, in doing anything at all to tear down these people. I listened to that interview and I thought the soldier whom you interviewed was extremely credible. And I was Minister for Defence for Australia, as you know. I sent a lot of these men into Afghanistan and Iraq. I have seen what they do, how they do it, and I have never been so proud to be an Australian as to be associated with them. I'm also patron of the Commando Welfare Trust. And I just say to Australians, just remember that we outsource the responsibility to kill and be killed in certain circumstances to these men and increasingly women. And we also know that war's a messy business. But I think our media, our free press in Australia has to be very, very careful before passing judgment on any of them. So thank you for shining a light on that.
And thank you for adding your voice to it as well. It's always good to catch up, and we'll be thinking of you and everyone else today, Remembrance Day. Dr. Brendan Nelson, we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Ben.
Dr. Brendan Nelson, who ran the Australian War Memorial and did it so well. He mentioned the Commando Welfare Trust. I hosted an event for them a couple of years ago, and Dr. Brendan Nelson spoke at that event. No notes, and he starts talking about individuals like he did just then about Kevin Fagan. And it's just amazing. He's just got such a love for our history and for the service provided by so many. We will remember them. You're listening to Ben Fordham on 2GB, my number 131873. You can email ben@2gb.com. The text line is 0460 873 873. It's 5 to 8.